And we are gonna go live to wish everyone a good morning and welcome to Daf Yomi, the most exciting share that you will have this part of the morning here in Bushi. We are going to get the screen share coming up in just a second once I've found the page for today. We are going to be doing Gemara Shabbat, page 58a. We're actually going to start on 58a. We are going to start on 58a, but I'm just going to explain a little bit about some of the things that have been going on before we get to the Gemara on 58a. But there's the shared screen for now. There are my children in the background. We are going to be good to go right here, right now in Bushi. All right, so we are in the sixth perek of Gemara Shabbat. And the sixth perek of Gemara Shabbat is talking about, the chapter is called Bamet Isha, because the Mishnah a couple of pages ago had been talking about what a woman is allowed to wear when going out in public and what she is not allowed to wear when she is going out in public. Now, this isn't talking about her fashion sense, and it's not talking about her modesty. The angle of the question that is being asked is, when it comes to the jewelry and the adornments and things that a person can wear when they are going out in public, when does it become a problem of carrying? When are we going to get concerned that the lady in question wants to show off her bling to all of her friends, and in so doing end up carrying it in a public setting? And when would she end up carrying it in a public setting for amot, for 6 feet or more? And that could be a problem. So the Mishnah a couple of pages ago talked about all these different types of threads and strands and charms and back bracelets and necklaces and all this kind of thing that a person could possibly be wanting to wear as part of their outfit, and whether these things are a problem, whether these things are not a problem. So that's what the the Gemara so far has been talking about, and then we come to a part of the Gemara just a few lines ago on the previous page, in which the rabbis are trying to understand what a kavla is. Now, the reason why they want to understand what a kavla is because it could be something that they're not allowed to wear when they are going out in public. So that is where the Gemara was up to at the end of yesterday's daf. What is a kavla? So we were introduced, first of all, to the opinion of Rabbi Avahu. Rabbi Avahu said that not a kavla, kavu, my apologies. And actually, we're going to go back to Rabbi Yanai. So Rabbi Yanai, at the end of yesterday's daf, was saying, a kavu, I don't know what it is. I'm not sure if it is a kavla da'avda. I'm not sure if it is a like an emblem or some kind of badge that would indicate that a slave would wear, and a slave would wear it to kind of say, like, I belong to this master, and they would wear it maybe on their head, maybe on their clothing. That's what we're trying to figure out. So there's a dispute as to whether this kavla, is an emblem, a badge that would belong to a slave, or whether it's a kippah shel tzemer, or whether it's some kind of woolen cap that would go under other decorative headwear. So they were not sure what this kavul is. And there's enough kamina there. There's a practical implication with regards to whether a woman would be able to, or a person would be able to wear it. Because the Mishnah says you can't wear a kavul in the public domain, in a public setting, in the public thoroughfare, in the street. So that is where the Gemara is coming from. That's where it picks up. So Rabbi Yanai yesterday asked the question, I'm not sure what it is. Rabbi Avahu said, I think it's most likely going to be a kippah semer, that it's going to be this woolen cap that a woman would wear under her other decorative headgear. And that is where the Gemara got to yesterday. It tried to bring evidence for this opinion, that that's what it is. But nonetheless, that's where we got to yesterday. And then today, at the beginning of Nun Chet Amud Aleph, at the top of 58a, we have the opinion of Shmuel. And that's where we're going to pick up from now. So Gemara says, first line, Shmuel Umar, Shmuel says, Kavla da'avdatnan. I think that when it talked about a kavul in the Mishnah, that it was actually the emblem that a slave would wear, and that's what he interprets this kavul as meaning. Umi amar Shmuel hachi. The Gemara asks, did Shmuel actually say this? Is this really his opinion? For ha'amar Shmuel, hasn't Shmuel said somewhere else, Yotzei ha'eved b'chosam shebetzavara, that the slave is allowed to go out with this seal, with this emblem around his neck, but he's not allowed to go out with the seal, with this emblem, with this signifying emblem in his garments, on his clothes. So if he did say that, then that's a contradiction, because what we're trying to say is that he's not allowed to go out with one of these things, and yet we have another source that says that he is allowed to go out. So which is it, Shmuel? What is your opinion? The Gemara says, Lo kasha, it doesn't have to be a contradiction. There could be a difference in whether this emblem is being put onto his attire at his master's insistence or at his own insistence. Has his master made it for him, or has he made it himself? Because if his master's made it for him, then we have to be more concerned. We have to be less concerned that he's going to take it off, because he would never dare to insult his master and risk the backlash if he was to take off the emblem, because his master's insisting that he wear it. So he wouldn't take it off and carry it out in public. But if he had made it for himself, then he might be more tempted to take it off, in which case it's a problem. So that's how we resolve this contradiction, that actually it's talking about two different types of emblems, one that he made and one that his master made. But in any case, what are we trying to establish this case of, according to Shmuel, that actually it is a case where the seal has been made by his master, in which case he can still go out in it because he would never dare to remove it. But then we have a question. So, am I law? Then why would he not be allowed to go out with this emblem, with this logo, whatever you would call it? There's going to be a name for it that someone's going to shout out any second. I can just feel it. Why should he not be allowed to go out with his clothes, with it in his clothing? And the Gemara answers, because there could be a concern that while he is walking around wearing it in his clothing, that if the emblem, if the seal fell off, then he's going to be afraid that the master will see him without the badge on his clothes. And so what he's going to do is going to take off his cloak, he's going to fold it up, he's going to put it over his shoulders and carry it. And then his master will never notice that the badge has fallen off. And that is like the Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef. The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Hayotzi betalis mekupeles umanachas lo al kasafa b'shavas chayav chatas. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, said that you're not allowed to take off your talis, you're not allowed to take off your cloak and to fold it up and put it on your shoulders on Shabbos, and you would be chayav a korban chatas if you did so. So that is the support for this opinion, that you can't just take off your garment and carry it. And that is why, if it was on your clothing, it would be a problem, according even to Shmuel, because you might end up taking it off and carrying it if the badge fell off. And this is like that which Shmuel said to Rav Chinana bar Shila when he said that all of the rabbis who are affiliated and associated with the Reish Galusa, with the exilarch, they are not allowed to go out with this sarbele chatime, with this emblem, with this badge on their cloaks. Lebar minach, except for you, to lo kapde alecha debei reish galusa, except for you because you are particularly close to the reish galusa, to the head of the exile, to the exilarch, and therefore only Rav Chinan bar Shela was allowed to go out with this seal on his clothing, because if he didn't go out with it on his clothing, he wouldn't get into so much trouble, but anyone else would have done. So that's what we've seen so far. But now what we're going to do is we're going to spend a lot of this time now analyzing what we've been talking about and the words of Shmuel in particular. So the Gemara says, Gufa. Let's return to the matter itself. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel said to us, that a slave, a servant, is allowed to go out with this badge around his neck, with this emblem around his neck. But he's not allowed to go out if it is attached to his clothing. We have a similar baraisa. That a slave can go out with this seal around his neck, but not if it's on his clothing. But now the Gemara says, Uraminhu, we have a contradiction from another place. That a slave is not allowed to go out with a badge, an emblem, this signifying symbol around his neck, and also he's not allowed to wear it in his clothing. So this is different to what we've been seeing so far, where we've been saying he's allowed to go out if it's around his neck, and now this source is saying that he's not. And it goes on to say, and in fact, both of these items would not be mekabel tuma. They're not capable of becoming impure. That is because they are not considered an adornment, an item of utility. They are not there as if you like, a genuine part of the person's attire. And so because they're not part of his adornments, because they're not part of the things that he would usually wear, as it were, if he had the choice, so because of that, they are not a functioning item, and they would not be susceptible to contracting spiritual impurity. The Gemara goes on to say, the Brisa goes on to say, he's not allowed to go out with a bell around his neck, but he would be allowed to go out with a bell if it was attached to his clothes. But because these things would be pieces of jewelry, would be adornments, so therefore these things actually would be mekabel tumah. These things are capable of contracting tumah. And then this source goes on to say the following, and that's what we're going to be analyzing a lot of today. An animal is also not allowed to go out with a seal, an emblem around its neck, and it's not allowed to go out if it's got it on its animal clothing. And it's not allowed to go out with a bell on its clothing or a bell around its neck. And all these things for an animal would not be mekabel tumah. They would also not be capable of contracting tumah. And this is all going to largely rest down to this whole discussion of purity, not purity. What can it become? Can it not become? It depends on the primary function of these bells and of these items. And what we'll see with the bells as well, it's going to depend on whether they have clappers inside. So this is all very, very interesting. And we'll see it all as it unfolds. So the Gemara, first of all, is going to try and analyze in a similar way the point of dispute and what exactly we're trying to talk about. So the Gemara says, so let's say again that we're talking about something that has been made by his master and something that he has made himself. The Gemara says, no, we're talking about things that have been made by his master, but there can be another difference over here. But the difference can be explained by whether it is an emblem, it is a seal, it is a badge that has been made out of metal, or if it has been made out of clay, out of earthenware, or clay. So the difference here is as follows. What we're going to see is that from a Torah point of view, anything that is made out of metal is capable of contracting tumah. And that can just be by touching it. So when it comes to things made out of clay, then it's a lot harder for it to be able to contract tumah, for it to be able to absorb or become ritually impure, to become tameh. So when it comes to a metal item, that is something that is very easily susceptible to tumah. Says the Gemara, Rav Nachman Amar Rabba bar Abuha, and we can explain this in the following way, according to Rav Nachman, who said it in the name of Rabba bar Abuha. Dava hamakpid alav Rabba ein yotzin bo. Anything that the master is going to be particular about, he is not allowed to go out without on Shabbos, in case it falls off, and in case he then wraps up his garment and carries it on his shoulder. But anything that the master would not be particular about, he may go out with it. Hachinami mistabra. This is logical. This is reasonable. Mitakatani zevazeh ein mekablim tumah, because we have said that it is not able to become ritually impure. Now, the things that can become ritually impure, we've said, are adornments, things that things that are important in that way. If you want, you can say, if you want, it makes sense to say that it's talking about something made out of metal. Because these are the things that cannot become ritually impure. However, other things that are made out of metal can become ritually impure. But if you're trying to explain this as meaning that these are emblems and badges that are made out of clay, so I don't understand then. It's not just these objects that cannot become ritually impure. Anything made out of these items would not become ritually impure. But Hatanya, we have a brisa, clay avanim, clay galadim, clay adama, that when it comes to items made out of stone, or it comes to items made out of dung, or it comes to items made out of clay, they are not able to be to become ritually impure. They can't become impure biblically, and they can't become impure rabbinically either. Rather, we have to then conclude that we are talking about items that are made out of metal. And that is how the differences get resolved vis-a-vis the Baraisa that we have been talking about. But now we analyze the Baraisa even further. And the other things that we've been mentioning, if you recall, about bells and about animals, that's all going to be discussed now. Omar, we return to a statement that Shmuel had said, he's not allowed to go out with a bell around his neck. But he is allowed to go out with a bell which is in his garments, attached to his garments. Why is he not allowed to go out with a bell around his neck? We are concerned that it's going to fall off and he is going to end up carrying it. So the Gemara asks, but then we have to be concerned about a bell in his clothes as well, that is going to fall off and he's going to end up carrying it around. But the Gemara resolves this. What are we dealing with when we talk about a bell in his clothing? We're talking about demicha be mumcha. We're talking about where it's been expertly sewn in into the clothing. And it's going in accordance with Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yeshua, who says, the sages were not strict and did not decree about something that had been professionally woven, because these things are extremely unlikely to fall off in public, and therefore you would not have a concern that he's going to just pick it up and carry it. Now we continue to analyze. Amar Mar, Shmuel had said, that animal cannot go out with this emblem around its neck, and it can't go out with it around in its clothing either. It can't go out with a bell on its neck and a bell around it in its clothing. And also, these things cannot become ritually impure. So the Gemara asks, can a bell of an animal not contract ritual impurity? Raminu, hello, we have a contradiction. And as we turn the page, we're going to see that very contradiction. When it comes to a bell of an animal, it can become ritually impure. V'shel deles, if it was the bell of it was of your front doorbell, then tahora, and it would not become, it cannot become ritually impure. It would be pure. Now, why is this? Because a doorbell, not necessarily the ones that we have now, but an actual bell attached to a front door, that has a different status. Anything that is connected to the ground cannot become impure, right? So anything that is built to the outer face, as it were, of a house, any of the walls, doors, windows, all these kinds of things, because they're connected to the ground, they cannot become pure. So therefore, a bell of a door, which is attached to the door, attached to the wall, and is therefore connected to the house, is considered as part of the house, and it cannot become impure. So if a bell that is tied to an animal, that can become impure, but the bell of a door, that cannot become impure. By the way, that has ramifications for things like electric items, which you plug into your power supply at home, right? So you may notice that there are certain items that we don't dunk in a mikveh before we start to use them. Yeah, when you buy pots and pans, we're supposed to immerse them in a mikveh, but for electrical items, often they can be we have a leniency that applies to a lot of electrical items because they are mechubar lekarka. They're attached to the ground by the fact that they're plugged into the wall, which is considered connected to the ground. So that's where some of the practical ramifications come up for us nowadays. But anyway, so we've said that an animal's bell can become impure, a doorbell cannot. But what about if we start switching uses? So the Gemara says, if you've got a doorbell which you have now converted and reworked to become this bell for an animal, it can become impure, and that is because you have taken it from something that can never become impure, and you're now using it for something that is always impure. So that simple change in usage gives it a new status. But what we're about to see is that if you want to go the other way, something that can become impure and you then want to attach it to a wall, it doesn't automatically have its status change. If it had been used for an animal and now you want to use it as your doorbell, even though you've attached it to the door, even though you have attached it to the door, you've nailed it down, it can still become ritually impure. And the reason for that is we have a principle in the laws of Tumah and Tahara, of ritual purity. You can take it into this, you can change its status and have it become ritually impure just by designating it with your mind alone. All right, so something that could never become tamei, you're now using it as an animal's bell, right? The mere fact that you have designated it in your mind as a bell for an animal means that it can now become ritually impure. But you wouldn't be able to have it removed from that easy state of impurity unless you had done a specific action, done a specific physical enhancement or changed the item in some way. But you haven't changed the item. All you've done is just taken it off an animal, nailed it to the door. It hasn't changed its usage in its any way. It hasn't changed its appearance in any way, and therefore, just by designating it as a doorbell, it wouldn't be enough. You would have to do some physical action to it in order to be able to change it. But nonetheless, that was all our kind of parentheses. That was our sidetrack in the question that we were dealing of, that the fact that an animal is not allowed to go out with it, and that was our contradiction. We had said that as we were turning the page, that Zug Shel Behema is Tameh, and beforehand we had said that a zug of an animal, bell of an animal, is not tame. So which is it? So the Gemara resolves this. Lo kashya, had isle inbal, had leisle inbal. If you'd ever wondered why the hotel in Jerusalem was called the inbal, it is because an inbal is the clapper of a bell. So if the bell has a clapper inside it, it can go ding-a-ling-a-ling. That's the best impression of a bell I can do. Then it is a functioning utensil, a functioning vessel, and it can become ritually impure. Hard to lace inbal. If it does not have a clapper, then it cannot become ritually impure. Says the Gemara. Manafshach. Whichever way you look at it, we're going to have a problem. Imanahu, if it is a vessel, if it is an item, and therefore it should be able to contract tumah, even if it didn't have a clapper, it should be susceptible to tumah. Ilav manahu, and if it's not a vessel, a something of utility, inbal masui leimana. Then the clapper, why should it make it a vessel all of a sudden just by the fact that it's got the clapper inside? It does, because Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Rav Yonasan, because as Shmuel bar Nachmani says in the name of Rav Yonasan, from where do we know that metal items that make a sound are susceptible to contracting tumah? Any item that that gets passed through the fire, because it's made out of metal, and so in order to make the item, you have to melt down the metal and mold it into the shape that you want. So anything that is made through fire, you shall pass it through fire as part of its purification process. And the Gemara learns out from here, afilu dibur yavo ba'esh, not just a kol davar, but kol dibur. Anything that makes a noise should be passed through the fire, meaning that anything that is metal and it makes a noise, such as I don't know, a bell, that should be given the status of a vessel. So how are we interpreting? What would the case be of a bell that does not have a clapper? Let's have a look at the middle clause that we had brought. It can't go out with a bell around its neck. But it is allowed to go out with a bell that's attached to its garments. And these things can both contract tumah. If it doesn't have a clapper inside it, then why would we be saying that it can become ritually impure? Or a minute, we have a contradiction. If you make a bell for a mill, which would, while you are crushing things, while you're crushing spices, so it would make a noise, ula arisa, or you've made a bell that's going to be used as a toy or as a bell on a cradle, on a cot. So these things are going to be making a noise for children. Or what do you call those things? On top of a cot, a
mobile.
Thank you, a mobile. So something a bit like that. Or for coverings for Sefarim, for scrolls, for Sifrei Torah, the bells. Or for the coverings, blankets for children that have got little bells on them to make a noise. Yesh lahem inbal, if they've got a clapper in, then they can become tameh. Ein lahem inbal, if they do not have a clapper in, then they cannot become tameh. Nitzlu in beleihem, adayin tumasan aleihem. But if you were to take out their clappers, then they would still be capable of contracting tumah. So we're seeing different opinions here as to things that have got clappers in, things that haven't got clappers in. They can become tameh, they can't become tameh. It's all very confusing. But Gemara resolves, Hani mili v'tinok de lekala avidile. We're talking about items that have been made for children, and we need them to make a noise. But when it comes to an adult, these bells can be ornaments. These things can be decorative and jewelry, and therefore, even if they don't have clappers in, they can still become tameh because of their utility. But you're right, for a child, if it didn't have a clapper in, then it wouldn't be susceptible to tumah anymore, because for a child, these things are useless. The whole point is having them with clappers inside. Omar, we return to another thing that we've been talking about. Nitlu and beleihem adain tumas on aleihem. If you were to take out their imbal, well, talking of bells, is someone playing their children's mobile? Can't see where that's coming from. But how very apropos. So Omar, we had just said that if their clappers were removed, adain tumas on aleihem, then their ritual impurity would still be upon them. But in order for that to be the case, they still have to have a use. They still have to be useful. That's what we've been saying. Lamai chazus. The Gemara asks, what are they useful for? Amar Abaye, hoil shahahejet yachzor lehachzira. Abaye says, since it's so easy for the clapper to be reinstalled, therefore, they are still considered a vessel of utility, and therefore you would still be able to. It would still be susceptible to tumah. But Mesiv Rava has an objection to this. Hazug v'ha imbal chibur. Another principle when it comes to ritual purity is that when an item is viewed as an entity because of the parts being so integral to each other, so they can contract tumah together even if they are detached. So Mesiv Rava, Hazug v'ha'imbal chibur, they are considered attached, and therefore if they are detached from each other, they should be considered useless. And if they are considered useless, then they should not be still contracting tumah when they're separate. And if you want to say that this is what we are trying to say, that even when they are not together, it is as if they are together, and that is why you would be tempted to say that they can still contract tumah. Vahatanya, but we have a baraisa, which is going to throw in another problem for us. And the baraisa says as follows: Misparas shoprakim, a pair of scissors made of different parts, right? So when you are storing them, when you're no longer using them, here is a pair of scissors. Here's one I made earlier. So this bit in the middle here connects to blades, essentially. So if it was a pair of scissors that were made to detach when you were storing them, or the Ismail Shel Rehitni, or if it was a blade of a carpenter, Chibur Tumah, they would be considered as attached for contracting tumah, even if they were separate. Ve'ein chibur lahaza'ah. But when it would come to purifying them again and needing to sprinkle them with water, as was the case back in the day, then if they were separated, you would not be able to purify one and expect it to purify the other as well. You would have to purify both of them. So they'd be considered attached for contracting tumah, but not for purifying them. But this doesn't really make sense. If they are considered attached, then they should be considered attached and connected with regards to sprinkling for purifying them. And if they're not considered attached, then why are they able to render the other one impure if they are not currently together? Rabba says, Devar Torah, actually, when you look at what the Torah says, when you are working with them, they are considered connected, both for becoming impure and for purifying as well. But if they were now taken apart because you're not using them and they're put away in their box or whatever, or they're put on the side, so when they are taken apart, they're not considered attached for contracting tumah or for purifying as well. You'd have to process them separately. They'd be treated separately. However, the Gazru, the rabbis, made a safeguard around this. Al tumah shelo b'shas malacha. When it comes to scissors or the carpenter's blade, where they are now separated, so they were strict. And they said when they are not being used for work, we're still going to say that they can both become impure at the same time, even if they're not connected. Mishum tumah shehi b'shas malacha. In order to protect the rule of scissors that become impure when they are connected during work. But when it comes to sprinkling, we're also going to be strict there as well. And we're going to say that for sprinkling, shehi b'shas melacha, mishum hazar shelo b'shas melacha. We're going to be strict and say that they have to be purified separately, because as a safeguard to protect scissors, or purifying scissors when they're not being used. So for that reason, we have a slightly different halacha, because it is a safeguard to protect these things. So anything that would ordinarily be considered as chibur, as attached, we're actually going to say can become tamei even when they are separated, and that is why the bell that doesn't have its clapper can still become tamei. You were wondering what's the connection over here. So the Gemara says, Ela Amarava, Hoil Vara'ui Lahakisha al Gabe Cheres. Rava says, since you can actually still make a noise with bells that don't have their clappers in, therefore they still retain some utility, they still retain some ability to make noise, and that is why they are actually able to become impure, because they still are functional as bells. They can still retain their utility even without clappers. And the Gemara finishes off here for today. It's Manami. We have a similar statement. Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Chanina hoil v'ra'ui la'kisha al gabe cheres. Since they can be struck against something made out of earth, out of clay, and so they can still make a noise, even if they don't have a clapper in. Therefore, they still retain some utility, and they can still therefore become tamei. That concludes today's daf, ladies and gentlemen. That is page 58, and we will pick it up again next week. See you in a few days' time. Have a wonderful and meaningful day.
Thank you very much. Thank you.